Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. Sorry for the slightly croaky throat and nasally sounding voice today, or at least that's how it sounds to me as I'm talking to you. I have had a little bit of a cold these last few days. I did have a cough, and that seems to have gone away now, but I can still feel a little bit on the chest, and I'm certainly quite congested and blocked up through the nose. So I'm doing my best to keep it all together and be able to talk to you. I'm certainly feeling a lot more energetic today than I have the past few days. You'll see from my knitting that I've literally not done a lot because I've been feeling pretty crap and I've just been basically sitting and staring into space, which is really frustrating during the school holidays, but that's how it tends to go, right? You keep going, and then as soon as you stop, it all kind of catches up with you. So I'm hoping that over these next few days that will clear up, so that I can continue to get ready for markets and be well for Gabby's next Saturday. So because I haven't been feeling that great, there hasn't been a lot of things happening around the farm. I kind of had this idea in my head of some plans of things I was going to do, and none of that has eventuated, but that's okay. It rained quite a bit last night, which is quite exciting. We're starting to really feel a little bit of moisture holding in the ground as the weather starts to cool down. Um, it's actually turned into a reasonably sunny day at the moment. There's like sun and blue sky on this side, and on this side it is dark storm looking clouds. So not really sure what's going to happen. We could get both or none, or I don't know. So yeah, I'm just sort of waiting to see which way the wind blows. So also being school holidays, routine is a little bit different. And I went to the soccer with Seb, my nephew, and my dad on Tuesday night. So just before I started to feel fairly crappy, maybe it was being out in the cold, but I think it was already coming. I'd sort of felt a little bit run down and was just hoping it was tired. But yeah, we had a really fun night. It was a Melbourne City game and they won, so that was great. I don't know a lot about soccer. It was just fun to get out and do that with Seb. He follows the team and is a member. And it's funny, I reckon a few years ago, he would have been the one that I would have been holding his hand and taking him everywhere and being in charge. And he's now at the age where he was the one that was actually in charge, and he's been on public transport a lot more frequently and regular and recently than me. So he was deciding which train we were going to get and which platform we were getting off at, and um, he knows the venue where the soccer is and where the seats are, and he went and got our food and all of that kind of stuff. So it was actually funny to sort of be in that role reversal, and but really enjoyed it, a night out with both of them. It was a fun night and something that I don't do very regularly. Certainly not a going out on a school night kind of situation, and haven't been to a sporting game in a really long time. So really had a lot of fun with that. I've been so frustrated with the ants getting into my place this last few months. It used to be quite a rare occurrence that they would end up invading. It would be because I'd left something out on the bench, or, dropped a little bit of dog food on the floor. But now they just seem to be finding ways to get in and keep you're invading my my space, to be quite honest. Uh, I got up this morning, was getting my coffee, and all of a sudden I see all through the underneath of my sink where the cat food is, they were everywhere. There was nothing, no sign of them last night, and this morning everywhere. When we had a dry day yesterday and then there was rain. And I think it's obviously to do with the weather cycle and the fact that we've had quite a long period of no rain. So I think they've been outside and being quite happy with that. And now they're looking for food and shelter, and I don't know, just anything to annoy me pretty much. Uh, So I sprayed everywhere and I had to throw away all of that cat food. Luckily, I had a little bit in a Ziploc, which was secure, so I didn't have to go out straight away this morning and buy new food for the cats. I had to spray the floor and then do a mop and a wipe down of everything they'd gotten into the coffee machine. It was an absolute nightmare. And they've been doing that in different places around my place and it feels like every time we have like a big storm these last like few months, I end up with them coming in at a different spot. I've had them coming in from I've had them coming into the bathroom. I've had them coming in through a window over by my entryway. I've had them coming in in this sink area. I've been spraying every time around all of the eaves and inside and outside, and it's just so frustrating. And I had them over here in the shed, and they took over my printer, and I kind of deal with that spot, like each spot individually, and then they come in from somewhere else. So that was my non-restful morning this morning. I've now done a whole cleanup, and hopefully they won't attack that spot again. But then who knows where else they're going to come in. I might have to get in like under the house and do something to try and get rid of them, because there's obviously a lot and they're looking for food, water, all of the above. I don't know. I have done a stack of dyeing this past week. I started last Friday as I recorded, and I did some really big batches for me of a number of colorways over Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Then I started feeling a bit rubbish, and then so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not so much work, but just making sure everything was hanging to dry. And today, hopefully, I will have enough energy to reskein everything. I've got piles and things hanging everywhere, and I want to, over these next few days, get everything reskeined and labelled and start to work out my stall situation, because I go back to work next week. So I'll have limited hours to be able to get that kind of stuff done to a point that I'm happy with. So let's first go through the colours that I did this past week. I did some rust. I also dyed up some denim, which is a similar dye style, and I had done berries last week. That's on DK. This is also on DK. This is to the fudge room. And then I did some blush. And I'll talk about this in a minute because it's something I want to have a little bit of a chat about. This is also blush, but as you can see, this one has turned out way more purple and not the pink that it's supposed to be. These were literally pots side by side with the same dye in them, and they turned out completely different. So I want to have a little bit of a chat about that shortly. But first, back to the rest of my colours. I then did some sock yarn. This is Winter Sunrise. I've got nasturtium, so it's dark orange pops through it, and some snozberries. And then I did a couple of mohair. I've got on my wispy lace base, this is apricot, and this is hydrangea. So all of these batches need to be reskeined and labelled, and I've got a whole other box of things that have already been reskeined, and they also need to be labelled. So Gabby's market is next Saturday. So after this, there won't be another video until after that market, but I'll probably be recording before I go. So no recap of Gabby's until a couple of weeks later. And then there'll be Warrigal, all about fibre and yarn. And then there will be the Moorbark handicraft and wool show. So I feel like I'm ready yarn-wise. Now I just need to get packed and organised. And I think that that will be okay, but I'll talk about that next week. Now, to this whole why did these turn out so differently situation. And I've seen a couple of posts lately from other indie dyers where they've had customers asking them to replicate a color that they bought months ago at a market. I've had people message me asking the same thing. And indie dyers always say, if you like a colorway, you need to buy it when you see it, because you may not ever get it that way again. Now, in general, my colorways are pretty good in terms of replicability. Is that a word? Um, I have talked about this before. I develop my recipe and then I'll do it a couple more times, and then I'll write it out on a card. I might alter it a little bit, and then I have it on a laminated index card so that I can refer back to it and make sure that I follow the steps in the right order with the right amount of water and the right amount of dye to get the same result over and over. And I tend to do pretty well in terms of recording everything properly and then also getting the conditions right to be able to do that. However, there's always going to be a slight difference. And sometimes there's even a slight difference between individual skeins within a batch. Now, at the moment, what I've been doing, because I'm trying to get quite a large amount of each colorway done, and for me, a large amount is like 8 to 12 in a batch, I will have 2 pots set up and I'll measure everything out exactly the same. I'll make up all of my dye solutions and make sure that there's enough for both pots, and I will do each process one at a time, or simultaneously, I guess you'd call it, with one batch and the second batch side by side, doing everything at exactly the same time with the exact same dyes. Even so, things can go screwy, as this did. And I don't understand why. I think that's the science of it, and I'm not the sciencey person, I'm the creative person. Something happened with the blue with this one, which made it all go purple, whereas this did what it would normally do and have it kind of not be 100% turning everything purple. So that's what I try and do. But there are so many factors outside of my own recipe and my own method of doing things in a particular way that can still alter the color. I use tank water, for example. So every time it rains, there are different elements and chemicals being put into that water that can then change how it affects the dye. And I don't go through a process of checking the pH levels or chemical levels in my water before I use it. I just use whatever water is in the tank. It gets filtered through so no dirt comes out, but that is the only process that water goes through. So there's water. There is then just air temperature, and potentially the yarn might have been processed in a slightly different way. It could have some additional machine oil on it or something from the spinning and processing aspect. The temperature of this space makes a difference. You wouldn't think so, but all those little things add up. And then there's also that the dye powder composition can also change. And it can change over time if I've had a bottle sitting for a little while. But then also from batch to batch of the dye powders, that can also change. I know I've just bought some more brown, and I know for a fact that it's saying that it's a new formulation of the color brown. So I don't actually know when I start using that if I'm going to be able to get the same colorways that I currently have using brown the way I was before. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of experimenting to see if it'll actually work. It may not. So there are so many little bits and pieces that go into how it all comes together, and it is an art and a science, and it kind of blends. And as much as you can be precise in your measuring, or sometimes not, because you might have a little bit of an accident, things just don't always work out the same way. But then there can be other times where batches, month to month, year to year, it's almost undetectable that they are different in any way. It's absolutely crazy. But then other times you can have issues with a particular color that just makes everything a little bit off. So I wanted to just have that little bit of a conversation with you, just so that when you're buying from an indie dyer, you know, if there's a colorway that you love, absolutely grab as much as you think you're going to want to need, because you may not be lucky enough to go back to that dyer and be able to get something from the same batch. They will obviously do their best to dye something that is as similar as possible, but it may not blend as well as you would have liked it to. And I've had that experience from other indie dyers as well. So it, we're only human, right? You can't make miracles happen. There's too much. There are too many variables for it to be 100% fail safe that everything's going to end up looking the same. So always choose enough yarn for a project that you think you're going to be able to make, or know that when you go to work with something, that's basically all you have, and then you have to either decide to add an additional color to it to do something else, or risk going back and having a slightly different version of the color the next time. This coming market, I'm going to have some seconds, some lonely skeins. They're sort of my freaks of nature, the things that didn't quite work out the way they should, or where I've used the end of some dye water that didn't exhaust out of a pot, and things that are non-replicable, or like ends of batches and things like that. So this one will end up being in that pile of freaks. So if you love this color, great, but I don't think I'm going to be able to replicate it, because I actually don't know why it turned out this way. So that's partly why I love dyeing, but when I'm trying to do big batches of the same colorway, it's extremely frustrating and a little bit disheartening, because now this is a special dye batch of blush for a customer, and luckily she only wanted 4, so these were all in one pot, and the second pot didn't turn out. So I won't have any blush at the market, but I'll have this version of it. First, to what I'm wearing this week. This is the Tolster Tee by Rebecca Clow of the Crabea. This is, I've made 2, and I probably will end up making more. This one is made out of Toil and Trouble yarns in the Queen of Cups colorway. It is a special souvenir skein that my sister bought me when she went to Circle of Stitches in Salem in the US. So I always get a bit of a smile when I wear this one. And yeah, it is the perfect cut t-shirt to wear. Now, as I said, this whole congestion thing, I haven't been feeling that great. So not a lot of knitting has been done this week, but I do have a little bit to share. I have done a little bit more on my EXP, which is by Sana & Co. I'm using the Callow colorway set by Louie and Lola. That's the Callow, no, that's the bronze, and the contrast is the Callow. I have tacked down the neck ribbing hem, and I've actually done it with a really visible color, because I wanted to be able to make sure I could see that I was in a straight line, because I've decided that I'm not going to ever wear it this way out. It's just not, for all the effort of this is what you need to be able to see, right? So I have tacked it down, and you cannot see that bright blue from this side of the work, so I'm happy with that. It's now beautifully stretchy, and I am into the last of the first set of increases, and then the increases change, and I think there's more increases on the body and not as many on the sleeves. But I haven't been feeling the best. So after I did the tacking down, I got like one more row done, I think, and then I haven't done any more work on this for the rest of the week because I don't want to be doing it when my brain's a bit foggy and make a mistake. I did a few rows on my maize top, but I didn't bring it over because in terms of showing you progress, you would hardly be able to tell. I literally just did a few rows while I was watching TV one night. So no real progress on that. But what I have done is I've cast on a cowl neck poncho. I talked about doing that last week. I'm using wispy lace, which is my yarn, in the apricot colorway. Now, I wanted to show you in terms of, I've just been talking about getting colors that are able to be replicated and that they work over and over again. So this is wispy lace apricot, which I've had dyed up for quite a while. And this is wispy lace apricot that I dyed up just this past week, and they are a perfect match. See, look. So sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I'm working on the cow neck poncho, which is a pattern that I designed to use one skein of lace weight yarn. I have this much left of my ball, and it starts from the neck, and you use a 4mm needle, and then when you work shoulder increases, can you see those? They're not cut there. There we go. You change to a 5mm, and then I think now I'm on a 5.5 or a 6. I'm on a 6mm now, which you change to after you finish doing the shoulders. I'll see if I can show you the shoulders. There you go. There's an increase. So you get a shoulder line for increases, and you have the cow neck that will sit kind of floppy around here, and then you just work down. I now need to weigh my yarn, knit 3 rows of the poncho, and weigh my yarn again, and then I'll know. In the pattern, I give you a little mathematical equation. I know I figured out some maths to be able to work out how much yarn to leave at the end to be able to do a little frill, ruffle, and bind off at the bottom. So I need to do that now before I get too much further through this ball and miss the point where I can actually figure that out. So I've been doing quite a lot of this. It's really easy because now that I've finished with the increases, it literally is just round and round. So I should get this done in this coming week, and it will be on my market stall for Gabby's in Geelong to be able to show the wispy lace knit up in a few different gauges, which I think is helpful. It is beautifully cloud-like and wispy and light, and I think would make a really lovely just over the top, just to keep your shoulders and your neck a little bit warm if there's a bit of a breeze. Oh no, I'm dropping stitches. I got so carried away, I've dropped stitches. I'm going to have to be very, very careful and pick these up. I've got them on very short needles, so we'll just pause for a minute. Right, crisis averted. I think I got them all. And because I was feeling a bit rubbish and couldn't focus on any of my knitting projects, I decided to try casting on a crochet project as well. I don't know if it's going to turn into what I think it's going to turn into, or if it's just going to end up being a blanket. It's okay. So I'm trying to make a long kind of duster jacket. I found the cami jacket or cardigan by TL Yarn Crafts, and I'm kind of basing the numbers off that, but I'm trying to turn it into one piece rather than being two front panels and a back panel and then the arms. So I did a chain with some waste yarn. My plan is that I'm going to add some white fluff along the bottom that I will either knit or crochet over the top of this pink. So you're not going to see it, but it'll hold the bottom of this jacket to make a little bit of structure on the bottom. And I couldn't even tell you like what stitches I'm doing. I'm kind of just making it up. And that's kind of what I needed, just to be able to be moving my hands, but not be all that worried about even stitch count or anything. I think with this lace and the way it's coming out, this is Alla Ray Kid Silk or Kid Sparkle, and I've got about 5 or 6 balls in a whole lot of different colours. Quite a lot of yardage in each of these, and I'm holding one strand at the moment of each of these colours. So with the sparkle and the fluff, it kind of is going to hide a whole lot of sins, I think. So far, my edge is not looking too wonky, but again, I'm going to be putting white fluff all the way around the outside too, I think. But it could just end up turning into a blanket, because this would easily sit all the way across my lap and be quite comfortable. So jacket, blanket, project to use up all of this mohair, silk, sparkle stuff that I have in my stash. Let's see where it takes me. I'm kind of teaching myself this as I go along, and because it's something that I kind of want to get the finished result for, I'm feeling like this is a good project to be able to pick up and put down over time, get a bit of a lacy look happening without the concentration that a knit lace pattern requires. And it's got beautiful drape, and hopefully it will end up being what I want it to be. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.